Okay, yeah. Yeah, so good morning, everyone. My name is Jan-Phillip, and I'm a geophysics master student at the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany. And like my colleague, I usually investigate earthquakes, volcanoes, and stuff like that, but seems like sometimes we get bored and raise our view. So now we are here and talking about meteors. And I will kind of continue where Dario stopped, but instead of data, I will show you a finite difference modeling of meteor-induced acoustic and seismic signals. So here I just want to remind you of these three types of signals we can detect with our seismometers. And in seismology, we deal most of the time with point sources, but today I will focus on the Mach Cone because we want to better understand the wave field and its features. And we use finite differences for that, which is a well-known tested numerical method to calculate wave propagation. I will not go into details here. Instead, we jump right to the modeling itself. So the Mach Cone itself, so we need a source to describe the Mach Cone in the near field. Complex fluid dynamics are necessary, and that is CPU costly and not actually needed for our purpose. So instead, we assume that our distances are large enough. So we are in the far field, and then we just model the acoustic wave produced by the Mach Cone. And we do that by placing point sources here on the trajectory, which are then triggered with time shift when the meteor passes, and following Huygens principle, the spherical waves will then interfere with each other to our intended Mach Cone here. And we tested this to be sure for different velocities. For example, 500, 2000, and 25,000 meters per second, and compared the opening angle of the Mach Cone with theoretical values, and we see it works very well. So for wave propagation, we also need a medium. For the atmosphere, we use the here seen atmospheric velocity model, which varies up to 343 meters per second. It's calculated from atmospheric properties. And for the Earth, we use a homogeneous half space of 2000 meters per second for the longitudinal wave. So now we have everything what we need to start the modeling. Here on the left, we see the 3D model space. We have the height, northing and easting in kilometers, the Earth surface with our station network, and in red, the trajectory of the meteor. And we will take a closer look at this light transparent blue plane, which is the height easting plane here on the right side. And the color indicates the normalized pressure in the air and in the Earth. And we stop here at one snapshot. So what we can see so far, we have an area where the spherical wave arrives here, which is a direct acoustic wave. We have an area where the plane wave will arrive, which is also a direct acoustic wave. And we see here some coupling of seismic waves. When we go further in time, we see that the plane wave here arrives with a certain incidence angle, which should lead to apparent velocity along the surface. And we see that our seismic waves travel along the surface faster than the air wave. So we should look at the travel times. And first we do this for the acoustic waves. So we look at stations slightly above the surface. They should just record the direct acoustic wave. And here on the right side, we see one example of the typical W-shaped signal that we saw earlier also in the 2017 study case. And then we determine the arrival times on all stations and compare the arrival times in form of contour plots for two different entry angles of meteors. So we have here the already seen 45-degree case, and we compare it to a 5-degree case. So here we have the contour plot for 45-degree case. We have northing, easting. The color indicates the arrival times after the first arrival. And for the 45-degree case, the pattern is circular. So that means the spherical wave prevails because of this steep entry angle. But when we compare this one to a less steep angle, this one here, then this arrival shape or this arrival pattern gets elongated in kind of elliptical shape or pill shape. And the wave field tells us that this results from the arriving plane wave of the Mach Cone, where the earlier mentioned apparent velocity along the surface introduces this elongated shape along the trajectory. So until now, we have only looked at the acoustic waves by placing the stations above the surface. But the seismic stations should be optimized for earthquake detection. So they should have a good surface coupling. And sometimes we even have borehole seismometers. So what happens when we shift the station slightly below the surface? And then we have this. So the arrival pattern changes again. And the pill shape broadens in north and south directions, where the apparent velocity of the plane wave has no large effect, but there the faster earth velocity or medium velocity produces this broadening. So it's clear to see if we use these two different arrival patterns as one station network. So some stations record the direct acoustic wave and some record the seismic wave. We would get large differences in arrival times and also errors in the trajectory estimation. So how can we distinguish between the arriving wave types? And one answer is we look at the particle motion. And for that, we rotate our two components north and east around the Becker-Zermut angle in geophysical convention. And we get then new components R and T, the radial component pointing in wave propagation direction, and the transverse component, which is orthogonal to R. And when we look at the particle motion, so here we have that R plane and the others, we see a strong linear motion in this case, here in the vertical and the radial component, and no motion in the transverse component, which matches our expectation for the arriving direct acoustic wave in form of a plane wave. And also the angle here matches very well. But now when we shift our station below the surface, the particle motion changes drastically from the linear motion to a strong elliptic pattern in the ZR plane, and still no motion in the transverse component. And this is very nice because we know this pattern very well in seismology. It's a retrograde Rayleigh wave and it's a surface wave. So my conclusions, modeling the Mach Cone as a point source or point sources on a line by using Huygens principle works very well for our purpose to better understand the wave field for different velocities, entry angles, heights, and so on. And with that, we can verify and predict our measurements from the seismic stations. We identified distinct arrival times and spatial patterns for various wave types, which are mostly ignored in the currently used seismic location methods for meteors. And we are able to distinguish between them by using the particle motion. So as an outlook, our next steps will be the development of an automatic detection of meteors with the seismic data. And we also want to improve the location methods with the knowledge which we gain from the modeling results, so we can use the whole potential of our advantages. So here are my references, and yeah, thank you for listening.